Alright, response video to the Modern Mystic. Don't really know how to begin this video because I have to say like thank you. But it's kind of a stupid thank you because I'm thanking him for a thing I shouldn't have to thank him for, but you sort of want to thank somebody for it. But anyway, he said some nice things about a video I did, and me personally and stuff. I mean, it was just, he didn't have to say those things. I mean, he would argue inside his own head something like he didn't have to do that. But, then part of him would say, yes, but that's what I thought at the time, so I said it. And, or something like that. So anyway, it was, kind of made my day. Probably shouldn't. Crap like that, compliments, probably shouldn't make your day. Should be above that. Insults and compliments really shouldn't control us, but, I can say that all I want, but, I'm still human. Whatever. I am a bit of a beastie. Guilty as charged. Lots of insect brain still running around in there. So anyway, getting on to the subject. Okay, so there's this confusion about language, because I'm saying a claim of ownership to define what a deed is or a debt note or all this other stuff. So maybe I'll try to start over again. Alright, so I drew a picture. Alright, it's not a good picture, but anyway, it's quick. Alright, so here's people. People do work, right? And they make stuff. Okay, so we're there. So, yeah, there's lots of stuff in the world. A ton of stuff. That's what people do. They make stuff. Okay, so let's just forget about money. They just make stuff. They don't make money. They make stuff. Okay. And they get paid something that enables them to buy stuff. Okay, so it's the same as stuff that they're getting paid in. It's just a different looking kind of stuff. It's not real stuff, but it is stuff because they can use it to get stuff. So they're basically getting paid stuff to make stuff. Okay, get it? I mean, yeah, sort of get it. You get it. I think you get it. Alright, well anyway, some percentage of this stuff on the earth, all the stuff that's been made, some percentage of it gets turned into transaction stuff. Stuff that you can trade, stuff that you're willing to trade. So like you could take something to the pawn shop and you could trade it for a little note that says you still own it, but you're going to have to buy it back at a higher price. And so now you have a note that's created that is also, that's tied to that piece of stuff. So some of this stuff ends up getting turned into notes or deeds, like a deed to a house or a deed to a car, or a deed to some other thing of value. A stock note, I guess we could call that a deed. A bond might be a deed. Or a debt note. Like I said, the two things are interchangeable language, but this is money, okay? Whether it's a debt note, whether it's a deed, whether it's a stock certificate, whether it's a dollar bill, it's all money. It's all deeds to stuff, okay? It's a claim of ownership of the stuff. And the key thing that happens here is the stuff and the deeds end up in different hands. You see, so there's no problem when the deed to the house is in the hands of the guy living in the house. No problem. When the deed to the car is in the hands of the guy who's driving the car. No problem. The deed and the stuff are next to each other. We have no problem. When the deed and the stuff get separated, then all of a sudden interest is going to get demanded. More is going to come back. So essentially, this is really just sloppy, cutting down to different components here. But the key thing is just to understand, I guess this bottom one we'll do first, that when stuff gets deederized, when there's a deed attached to it, and the deed ends up separate from the stuff, then the stuff has to come back with more stuff attached. Okay, that's the interest. All right, so the deed is essentially just a claim that when this stuff comes back to the original owner or to a possessor, that it's going to have to acquire more stuff when it gets there. So it's going to have to collect stuff somewhere out of the whole stuff pile. It's going to have to take either it's going to have to collect some more deed stuff, or it's going to have to collect some of this real stuff. But it's going to have to collect stuff. All right, it's because it's a claim of interest, of gain, of profit. And so that's what I meant by, alright, so I got written down here, government debt is essentially a deed to future work. So this is where things get tricky, because now we've added something new. Okay, we don't have deeds just for stuff anymore that exists. Now we have deeds for something that doesn't exist yet, work, that hasn't been done yet. And that's the trick with the stock certificates, is that's another one where it has the real value is in the future work being promised, not in anything that currently exists. And so then people are basically demanding interest payments on stuff that doesn't even exist yet. Okay, it's not even here yet, and they're demanding interest on stuff that doesn't exist, and that interest has to be paid out of the stuff that does exist. Okay, because you usually can't pay the interest in stuff that doesn't exist. You have to pay the interest in stuff that's real. So that's where this gets really complicated, because as those markets inflate in value, the value of all the stuff gets deflated. The stuff, certainly the stuff that isn't deeded, and even the other deeded stuff. And I know this gets stupid saying the word stuff 7,000 times, but so money and all these notes are a claim to stuff. It's not a claim to nothing, it's a claim to something. And the problem is that some of these deeds have been written on stuff that doesn't exist. It's stuff that's not here yet. And they're being thrown into the market as if they're just as good as the deeds for a real thing. So a deed to a real house is somehow being compared to a deed to a future laborer working in the United States 10 years from now, and how much value he's going to produce. And somehow these notes are being transferred as if they're somehow that you can somehow balance those things as equals. And like I said, the real question is, the real problem is when we start to do this deeding thing, where we start selling our future work. Like the government has sold my future work for about 700 years. I don't know, I owe the government $200,000 worth of work. Yeah, right, like I'm going to be somehow in this economy be able to produce that. No friggin' chance. So anyway, we've transacted, and really the question is, but who holds the deeds? Who holds the ownership notes? I might live, and like I said, I might live here and think I own this stuff, but if the government came for their money tomorrow, they'd take all the stuff I own. I mean, everything I own, they'd take. I would just everything. I'd be just here sitting on the ground naked and have nothing, because I don't own enough stuff to pay my debt. I haven't collected enough stuff. And but anyway, the key thing to understand is that owning stuff enables you to transact. So the more stuff you have, you can use your stuff, lend it to somebody, have them pay you back interest. So now your stuff pile is increasing. So when your stuff comes back to you, it has collected more stuff. And that's what I was talking about. And as that consolidates in just in piles that people own, their investment capital, those piles keep growing, and there's nothing to stop that growth. And so then everything becomes something that's for rent rather than something that can be bought. And I guess that's the simplest way to put it. That's the nature of monarchy. That's the nature of this consolidation of wealth problem, is that there's no capacity for somebody to be an owner anymore. All they can do is be a serf, a renter. There's no access to ownership, because their work has been devalued because there are so many claims of ownership and so many rents that have to be paid. Every step in the manufacture process, a rent has to be paid, an interest payment has to be paid on the supplies, on the equipment, on the building, on every aspect of it has a interest being collected. And so every business, there isn't just one interest payment on one loan. There's an interest payment built into all aspects of doing business that's being collected, because so many parts of it have been built on this debt engine. Maybe that's the best way to say it. I don't know. Well, anyways, hopefully that helped explain what needs to be explained. Hopefully. So that's what I mean by collateralized. I mean, everything is collateralized. I mean, the stuff is the collateral. That's what it's always a claim to some kind of stuff. It's not a claim to nothing. If the government has to pay back its bonds, it has to sell Yellowstone Park. It has to sell everything it has to pay back the bonds. I mean, the bonds are a claim on stuff. Yeah. That's the way it is. Okay. And so is the money. So it's all a claim on stuff. claim of ownership to stuff that is claimed to be owned. Like I said, I don't own this. The government holds the deed to it. They hold the deed. I don't own it. I'm renting this. I just don't know it.